Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World, the Flash Briefing. Today, I wanted to talk about a study that was done in July, I think it was this year. Cognilytica. Don't know if you've heard of them before. I hadn't until today. Cognilytica have done a study on voice assistants. It's called the Voice Assistant Benchmark. And essentially what they've done is they've taken the Amazon Alexa, they've taken Google Home, Alexa's going to go off again here, they've taken Cortana and Siri, and they've asked each of these voice assistants a series of questions, 100 questions in total, 10 different categories, and what they've done is it's not intended to compare them all with each other, although inevitably that's what you end up doing, and that's probably what I'm going to do now. It wasn't intended to compare them all, it was intended to just see how the AI behind the scenes is, or how capable the AI is behind the scenes. But it was quite interesting. Out of 100 questions, Alexa answered most of them correctly out of the group. They only answered 25 correctly, but that was the highest that the rest of them did. I know you don't, and that's part of the problem, is because you didn't know most of them. 75 questions that you couldn't answer. Google could answer 19, Siri answered 13, and Cortana answered 10. So on the face of it, you would look at that and you would think, right, well, if Alexa is answering 25 out of 100 questions, that's pretty bad. And Google, there's studies out there, I've seen studies that have shown that Google Assistant can answer more questions than Alexa. I think Google's got a better knowledge graph, and using the featured snippets in the search results means that more often than not, it can find an answer to your query. But this study doesn't paint that same picture. So according to this study, Alexa is the most capable voice assistant, but you need to look at the questions that it's asking to figure out whether or not that's the case. So I'll show you an example of some of the questions, and some of them are a little bit random, to be honest. What it did well is it started out with some collaboration questions, so really simple questions, or what should be really simple. Things like, what is 10 plus 10? Which everyone, apart from Cortana, got right. Cortana couldn't answer 10 plus 10, which is worrying from an enterprise voice assistant. But how do you spell voice and stuff like that? How far is it from Paris to Tokyo? These kind of basic questions, and all of them got most of those right. Then it kind of started moving into, it started getting more and more advanced. So there was 10 categories, 10 questions in each category, and each category got more and more advanced. So the first category was understanding concepts and questions and results. So for example, it was saying stuff like, hey Google, how much does a ton of peas weigh?
Sorry, I'm not sure how to help with that, but I'm still learning.
Yeah, couldn't answer that one. Alexa, hang on, let's unmute her. Alexa, how much does a ton of peas weigh?
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
Interesting. So it started out with these questions, and broadly speaking, there was a couple of questions that they all got right. Things like, do I need an umbrella today, and stuff like that. But there's a lot of questions that weren't right. But you can question whether or not those are the right kind of questions. So how much does a ton of peas weigh? The answer's in the question. So it's almost as if you're trying to game the assistant by answering it, by giving it kind of like weirdly framed questions. Like, you would never really ask a voice assistant, how much does a ton of peas weigh? Because a ton of peas is a ton of peas. And then the questions started getting a little bit more complex. So it was starting to understand comparisons. So it's looking at things like, what's faster, a turtle or a cheetah, for example. So, hey Google, what's faster, a turtle or a cheetah?
On the website albertwhitman.com, they say, what's faster than a cheetah? No animal on Earth can run faster. But a peregrine falcon can swoop faster than a cheetah can run. And the falcon can't compare to an airplane, a rocket, or the speed of light.
So according to the study, Google did that quite a lot, Google Assistant. It didn't answer the question directly, but it answered it in a roundabout way. It just kind of reeled off a long kind of paragraph and hoped that you would find the answer in there somewhere. So it did say that there's no animal faster than a cheetah. So you can deduce from that a cheetah is faster than a turtle. But it didn't understand the fact that you were trying to use a turtle as a baseline. And the reason for that is that Google, as I mentioned, uses featured snippets. So it uses the answer boxes that are presented in the search results. Sometimes you'll do a search and you'll see that there's the answer actually displayed in the search results. So Google will just read that. So essentially you're relying on a website somewhere having that specific answer and Google finding it, which in that case obviously didn't. So how valuable is that question though? How valuable is having that answer? I suppose that there is a kind of novelty appeal to voice assistants where you can ask it questions like that. Things like, Alexa, how long is a giraffe pregnant for?
Giraffes are typically pregnant for between 13 to 15 months.
Gemma was pregnant for nearly 10 months, and that was hard. I cannot imagine being pregnant for nearly 15 months. So I suppose there is some value in being able to answer those kind of questions, especially for kids and stuff like that. And it's just it's easier than pulling out your phone and Googling something. And if a kid can just ask an assistant questions like that, then it's educating them and stuff like that. So fair enough. I can see the value in those kind of questions. Then the categories started getting a little bit more complex. So if I can get my mouse working, here it is. So it started trying to understand cause and effect. So what colour is burnt toast? If I repeat something, have I done it more than once? And no assistant did particularly well in that, apart from Google, who could answer what happens when you melt ice, which is interesting. Hey Google, what happens when you melt ice?
On the website j2e.com, they say, the ice cube, which was solid, has turned into the liquid water because the air temperature is warmer than the freezers, which means the ice particles gather heat energy from the warm air.
Okay, so yeah, I suppose it answered that question. The next category was reasoning and logic, and most of the assistants didn't do very well there. There was questions in there like, can I drive to Australia from Europe? How many eggs are there in a box of a dozen eggs? Can you eat toxic food? Every voice assistant got that wrong apart from Siri. So let's have a look. Hey Siri, can you eat toxic food?
I found something on the web about can eat toxic food. Check it out.
Didn't understand me, did it? Let's try that again. Hey Siri, can you eat toxic food?
I cannot.
It just said, can you eat food? Didn't get toxic. Hey Siri, can I eat toxic food?
One option I found is Il Vesuvio, an Italian restaurant, which averages for...
It's saying 6 food. Talk about accents. No, it doesn't. It sounds terrible. I've been there before and the pizzas are shite. Anyway, apparently Siri got that right. It didn't work for me. I don't think it understands my accent. It doesn't speak Northern. But as the categories progress, long story short, as the categories progress, the assistants start to answer less and less questions. But the questions start getting more and more obscure because it's not the kind of questions that you would ask of an actual assistant. So, are parents older than their children? Can you grow books on trees? Should I let a toddler drive a bus? And then after that, they start looking at Winograd schema, and it goes on anyway. There's a podcast which they did, and they went through this in a bit more detail. So I'll link to the podcast in the show notes. I'll also link to the actual study so you can take a closer look at it. There's some videos in there as well of Alexa and so Google and that responding to these questions. So yeah, so that's kind of it really. It's an interesting study. Do check it out. Whether or not it's a true reflection of the usefulness of a voice assistant and the capability of a voice assistant, I'm not entirely convinced. But it is entertaining and it's interesting anyway to look at. So I'll link to it all below. Check out the podcast. You can have a read of the study if you like. And yeah, let me know what you think.